then we have to change positions in order to complete the shuffle. So I'm going to move my second finger up to the 5th fret of the 5th string, play the 6th, and then I'm going to have to bar the 4th and the 3rd strings at the 4th fret, sound those 2 strings. Do that slowly. Complete the shuffle. Here's the whole thing. Same thing 2 frets lower for the A, so we don't have to use a bar here. And then another E chord sounded, and we have our turnaround. Now, essentially, you can do the fills where you like if you're doing this as an instrumental. So you could play maybe the E shuffle and then do an A fill. It's up to you. It's worth experimenting. Try and keep it even, though. Don't do 2 bars of chord, 1 bar of scale, 1 bar of chord, 1 bar of scale, 2 bars of scale. Try and keep it even. So you're going to have 2 bars of chord, 2 bars of scale, or 1 bar of chord, 1 bar of scale. Here's the whole thing through one more time, slowly. And that's shuffle and fill. Nickel and Dime Blues is from Texas, is in the key of A, and for the most part has a monotonic bass. Nickel and Dime Blues. Nickel and Dime largely uses small chord shapes of A7, D7 and E7 played over a monotonic bass line. Most of these small chord shapes are slid to from 2 frets away. You'll see that as you go on. Let's start now. We're sliding to an A chord at the 5th fret here, but we're starting at the 3rd and 4th, sliding into the A. Here it is with the monotonic bass. Notice that as I slide from the 4th to the 6th frets, as the note reaches the 6th fret, so I play the bass note. Now this is the trickiest part. You'll want to try that over and again. Then we're into an ordinary A chord here at the 2nd fret. stretch up to the long A. Do that again. And you get that again, but this time we'll end with an A7. Here it goes. We now change the same idea into D. We do this by sliding from the 3rd fret up to the 5th using this small shape which comes from this D chord here. Here we go. And then we slide down a little further to a more conventional D shape, which comes from that one. And then we play across the D7 chord. Do that slowly. Back to our A. A7. Now there's a little bit with an ordinary E chord. To a D7 with an F sharp bass. Now that's a D7 chord as you normally play it, but with your thumb tucked over on the 2nd fret of the 6th string to produce the F sharp bass. Back to our A for a turnaround. We'll do that very slowly then, all the way through the first section. Turn around. Alright, let's look at the second section in detail. Once again, we're using the same idea of sliding to partial chords. Now let's look at the chords that we'll be using. We'll be using the A7 up here, also the A, and really what I'm doing is I'm going down 2 frets, which is theoretically a G, and sliding up. But rather than use the whole chord, which would be cumbersome, just use 2 notes to imply the chord. Down to the G. This is just a little passing thing that sounds nice, so we'll put it in. Not quite so nice, but it gets us to where we want to be, which is these 2 notes here, which are part of an A7 chord, a G and an E. Okay, I'll play that section for you. For the D part, we're using this little shape here, which comes from this F shape, D chord at the 10th fret. Just 2 notes from the chord. Down here. And then back to our A. And then the last section is pretty much like it was in the first part. It's an E, and a turnaround. Okay, I'll play that through slowly. nickel and dime. Blind Blake, who was also known as Blind Arthur and Arthur Blake, but whose name was probably Arthur Phelps, first came to fame in and around Georgia in the early 1920s, and then he moved to Chicago in 1926 to record for Paramount. He was one of the main figures in the growth of an urban as opposed to a country blues style. He recorded over 80 sides for Paramount, including some with Kid Sox Wilson and Ma Rainey. His playing was a major influence on such players as Big Bill Brunzi, the Reverend Gary Davis, and Josh White. Blind Blake's first big hit was probably West Coast Blues, which, like many of his slower blues, was in the key of C. Where's My Woman Now is a slowish blues in the key of C. Notice how each key adds its own special flavour to a blues. So far we've had blues in E and A. All right, listen to Where's My Woman Now. Now, before we get into playing this one, a quick word about the chord symbols above the tablature. They're there purely as a guide. If you go to the normal shapes suggested by, for instance, C or F or G, you'll find your hands already in the right kind of position to play the notes that are coming up. And largely I would suggest that you keep notes on as long as possible and let them ring, unless they really sound awful. Blues is mostly a chord-based music, and so it helps if you have all of the chord ringing as much as possible. Having said that, the first half bar of this tune probably doesn't relate to any C major chord that anybody knows. But C major is implied. Right, let's start with the first bar. So we have a bar at the 3rd fret. Play that little G note to lead us into the piece. We have a walk up the 1st string, keeping that bar in position, and then down to our C chord that we'll probably recognise here. A little run across the strings, which leads us into our F chord. Let's try that. This is the difficult part. We have to hold that F going with our thumb and bend the 2nd string at the 3rd fret with our 4th finger. As it comes down, play the 4th string at the 3rd fret with your thumb in an alternating bass. Hear that as it comes down? Play across the F chord, another bend up, and re-pick it. It's harder to do slow than it is fast. Let's try it again. First 2 bars. Then we're on to an ordinary C chord. Strum. A G chord. And it's best if you use this fingering for a G chord. You might not be familiar with it. Normally people would play it like this. But if you try and use your 2nd, 3rd and 4th fingers, you'll find your fingers are in just the right place to do this next little twiddly bit. So from the F, and then we're back home to a C chord. Take off these two fingers, which gives us a little walking line to a C7 chord, just a normal C7, 3-finger C with a little finger on the 3rd string at the 3rd fret, with an alternating bass. I'll play that C bar by itself. And then we have virtually the same F again. Here we go. Notice that we hammer on to the 3rd string 2nd fret as we go into that bar. Play the 3rd string open. As it rings, put the thumb over and play the 6th string and hammer on the 2nd finger. That's quite tricky. So from the C, just before. C7, hammer. As there's a little reverse bend there. Pre-bend the 3rd string, sorry, the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Let it down. Then we get an F minor chord. Now for this, keep your hand in pretty much the same position for the F. Just take off your 2nd finger, which should reveal the note on the 3rd string at the 1st fret, which should be under your 1st finger. I'll play the F bar going into the F minor. Okay, now we just simply play an F minor chord with an alternating bass, and maybe stick on this little finger to add F minor 9th. So the 2 bars together. Now we have another C, restate it. Little bass line coming up now. I'll do that again. Walking down to a G, that same shape, but we're going to stick our little finger now on the 4th string 3rd fret. Jump over to the 1st string 1st fret, stick your 3rd finger on the 2nd string at the 3rd fret and your little finger on the 3rd string at the 4th fret to get these 3 notes. So we get. Notice they're in groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Open 3rd string, 4th string 3rd fret, open 3rd string, and then a little hammer on the 5th string. I'll play those 2 bars again. Tricky, isn't it? I'll do that again. Back to our F. Now you're going to have to come off that F chord to get up to that 4th fret of the 2nd string. And then a very common ending for a blues to a C, C7, F, F minor, C, to go round again with a little run. I'll play through that very slowly, see if I can get it right. Around we go again. It's easy to forget that many blues first saw the light of day not as desperate searches for solace when a lover upped and left, but in fact as dance tunes. Many of the big blues guitarists were writing in the 1920s and 1930s and had already been influenced by ragtime. Walking to Milwaukee is a ragtime blues in the key of G. Now I'm going to play it on a 12 string to give it that Blind Willie McTearl, Reverend Gary Davis feel, but I often play it on an ordinary 6 string too. Alright, Walking to Milwaukee.